Sometimes we're unfairly defined one way, but we do have women and we have Hispanics, and we're young in the House right now, on average by 5 years. Our leadership team 17 years. So you think about 27 members under 40 and what that means as far as next generation leadership. We have a deep bench, and that's all very exciting to me.
Despite what some people might think, John Boehner will not be the Speaker of the House forever. Sooner or later, he will surrender the gavel and somebody else will pick up that mantle. The question is, who will that person be? How will it change the power structure in Washington? And will it bring America any closer to getting things decided? That, the snapback from the Mississippi runoff election, much more. Welcome in Midpoint now. Columnist for the Huffington Post, host of his self-named talk show, Gary Duff, checks in with us today. Gary, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Ed.
It is a pleasure, my friend. Let's go ahead and get right to Cathy McMorris Rodgers, who seems all excited. She's thrilled. She's talking about the base. But while there are those articles out there that will say she is a potential logical next choice, is she really?
You know, I think she is. I think it's a big deal to have Republicans represented by a female voice. And she provides that, especially a new narrative for Republicans to move to. You hear a lot about Tea Party and social conservatives bickering. This new layer of Republicanism, this return to compassionate conservatism, is something we saw in her rebuttal at the State of the Union address. And it's something that will lead her forward. You know, she's putting a lot of legislation forward now, one that's going to deal with the VA and some of the issues that they have been having. And she's going to continue to work on women's issues. You hear Hillary Clinton running when she runs for president, if she runs for president, talking a lot about women empowerment. Cathy McMorris Rodgers is taking that. She had that before Hillary was talking about it. And she's going to run with that and change the party, provide Republicans with a new narrative. Because when Democrats ran against Republicans in 2012, what they said was that Republicans were not the party of women. Cathy McMorris Rodgers changes that.
All right, now you brought up the phrase compassionate conservatism here, which I think is fair. Sure. However, you will have to agree with me that there's a good part of the nation right now that doesn't see the conservative movement, whether it be the standard GOP or the Tea Party themselves, being compassionate about much of anything these days. It is a perception that is constantly foisted forward by a number of people. So how then does Cathy McMorris Rodgers and the people she would bring along with her change that perception? That's going to be tough.
Yeah, well, you know, if she becomes Speaker, which is something that I talk about in the piece, if she becomes Speaker, something that she does is open people to new talking points. She talks about immigration. She talks about being open to the idea of immigration reform. She wants to change the way that we've been treating veterans. We've seen the Obama administration do a terrible job when it comes to getting veterans care. She's proposing a bill just this week with another Republican from Florida to get VA care back on the table, something that she talked about in Spokane, where she comes from, her district, and opening some VA hospitals to get veterans there and not put them on waiting lists. So I think that's pretty compassionate, and I think that's pretty, nice of her and good of her to get that back on the table. And a lot of people who look at the speakership, what that job really is setting the agenda. So she'd have the opportunity to get a lot of these women's bills that she had been preferencing, getting women equal pay, getting women equity. So all these different plans that I'm mentioning, these are going to be back on the table, and these are going to be the new agenda that the Republican Party will take on if she becomes Speaker.
Let's look at John Boehner, though, because Boehner is a very powerful man. When you see him speak, it doesn't make a difference if you like him or you dislike him. He does push forward that authority and that power figure that you have. Can McMorris Rodgers have that sort of power and that authority? And at the same time, would you not agree that there are going to be those on the left who will say, you're just putting a woman in there because we know that there's a war on women, so you're just putting it up there as nothing more than just a showpiece to show everybody that you seem to care about women? Two parts in that question.
Yeah, you know, I'll go with the second question first. I'll start with that. thing is, though, Republicans Cathy McMorris Rodgers has been in leadership since 2012. She has represented her district, and she had also represented women since 2007 as a head of one of these caucuses, working with Democrats and talking with Democrats and reaching across the aisle. So the thing is here, Republicans she's been in a leadership position for a long time. So she has enough credibility, and she has established herself well enough in the party for her to be able to give these critiques. And I don't think Democrats will be able to get off the fact that, first, that she has the credibility, that she has sponsored many bills, over 60 different bills have come to the table, that she's been a part of, and she's helped get legislation passed. So for Democrats to say, well, they're just throwing another woman in there, the fact is she is a very credible woman on the national field, and she has the experience to give proper critique. So if Republicans want to come at her and say, well, listen, she's just another woman, she's really not.
If Democrats want to come at her, of course, that's where part of it will be.
Democrats.
I might have said Republicans. Exactly. We'll go ahead and make that correction right away. Now, let me ask you about something else that the Republicans have to work on, whether it's John Boehner, whether it's Cathy McMorris Rodgers, or anybody right now. We are coming off 6 runoff elections this week where there is some angst being heard by members of the Tea Party here. There are those who say that the Republicans, the actual established Republicans, are now understanding the price of crushing the Tea Party, and that they want to crush the Tea Party and keep them down. There is a tremendous amount of money being spent here, $23 million by establishment-aligned groups, propping up the favorite House and Senate candidates in some of these contentious primaries. And nearly a third of the establishment money on this has come from the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. All right, we've just given you a lot of numbers here. But there still is a fight going on here in the Republican Party. Is McMorris Rodgers or someone else got to take the lead here, and are they going to be powerful enough and influential enough to go ahead and bring these sides together into a unified party?
Yeah, well, I think we saw that when we were watching the House Majority Leader race with Congressman McCarthy. And also then you have this whip position which is now being taken over by someone who was favorable to the Tea Party, Steve Scalise. And so you have these two people who are also in the running for the speakership. And the reason I bring them up is because McMorris is part of that leadership, and these other two people have been fighting. McCarthy has been, by Congressman Labrador, has been sort of lambasted as not conservative enough. Then meanwhile, you have this whip position being filled by somebody who the ACU has given 100% conservatism rating. So you have these two people in leadership, and then you have Cathy McMorris Rodgers, who is sort of, in my perspective, and the reason I wrote this piece for the Huffington Post, was a new way, a new narrative. A lot of politicians get this flack that they are, power seekers. If she were the speaker, I think that narrative would change. She's a mother of several children, 3 children, 3 of which she had when she was a congresswoman. She's compassionate, she's warm, and that's what's been sort of her trademark in going forward. When she gave the State of the Union rebuttal, Republicans loved it. When she talked about her kids, Republicans loved it. And also in this situation, you can be a mother and still be a leader. You can still be a powerful woman. Slate did an article on her, profile on her, and said, listen, for Republicans, look at Cathy McMorris Rodgers. She can do everything, and that was the reason I wrote my piece. I think she can, and I think she can lead the Republicans.
I got about a minute and a half left here, and I can't let you get away without talking about something else that is being talked about right now in Republican politics, certainly. Cochran versus McDaniel in Mississippi, a contentious race that we have just seen. It's one of those 6 races that I'm talking about. There are all kinds of charges and countercharges flying back and forth here. There is racism being talked about. There is retribution being talked about here. From what you have seen, what is your take on what comes out of Mississippi now, and how maybe it helps to shape, or at least alter perhaps, a national dialogue?
Well, you know what? We have to take every race into consideration, and look back at the history of some of the races that have been won and lost, and look forward to what can be new for the Republicans. I think we can take credence from the fact that Eric Cantor, if you don't look at your district and you don't pay attention to what those voters are saying, then you will lose. that dialogue is important. When Republicans need to get this House back in order, they need to try and win the Senate, they need to get these primary victories and move forward and be able to, you know, coalesce a grander party and bring together all of these sides that you were talking about, Ed. The Tea Party, social conservatives, a lot of people are fighting, and we need somebody to bring that together.
They got a long way to go, and they got a lot of work to do. Gary Duff, the article again is why Cathy McMorris Rodgers could be the next Speaker of the House. It was on Huffington Post. And Gary, thank you so much for joining us. We'll do it again.
Thank you for having me. And just one last thing. If I'm wrong, you can always have me back to prove me wrong.
Okay.
You can always have me back.
We're going to take you up on that because we always keep everybody's numbers handy just in case, but that's good to know. Gary, thanks so much, buddy.
Thanks for having me.
All right, Gary Duff joining us now. And again, it's an awful lot of work for both sides to do. Coming up a little bit later on right here in this first hour of Midpoint, when is a flag much more than just a flag? I will tell you that because here on Midpoint, we question everything.